Hello and welcome to another edition of On the Whistle. Thanks again for sending your questions in. I'm sorry that again I can't bring you a Sunderland win to talk about. 4 defeats in a row, and if we're honest, the season drifting very, very quickly. Frustrating one today. I think it kind of summed up where Sunderland are at in a way, in that personally I didn't think it was too bad of a performance today collectively, in terms of I don't think there was a huge amount between the two teams, and I don't think there was a huge amount between the performance level this time last year when Sunderland came here and won 1-0 with a fantastic Abdullah Bar goal, and the performance level today. I thought that Sunderland worked quite hard, they pressed quite well. I don't think Norwich created loads and loads of opportunities, but I think in the absence of Jack Clarke, in the absence of Patrick Roberts, and with that, the absence of that centre forward that we've talked about all year, I just don't think they had enough quality to go on and win the game. And ultimately I think that's the difference at the moment. I think that we're seeing injuries are a bit of an issue. The recruitment is therefore come into focus because we're seeing that the depth just isn't there, and Sunderland haven't got the top 6, the top 10 probably quality outside of those sort of regular starters that you can really hang your hat on. So it's a strange one. I don't feel like today we're Norwich side in really good form at home. I don't feel like that's where the season's been lost, if you like, where the top 6 race has been lost. I think there have been worse performances than today and more damaging results than today actually, but I think it did sum up Sunderland, whereby going forward they're nowhere near good enough at the moment. They don't create enough, they're not clinical enough, and I think it's quite concerning at the moment, and the season's only going in one direction at the moment. So let me get into your questions. A lot of you have asked about whether Sunderland are in a relegation battle. Some of you may be a bit tongue-in-cheek, some of you I think really concerned genuinely about the direction of travel, and I can understand it because it's 4 defeats in a row and it's the same issues every single week, and the upcoming fixture list is really difficult. Leicester on Tuesday night, Southampton next weekend, and then even teams like QPR the week after that. The championship has completely changed in the last few weeks, and that a lot of teams at the bottom are coming on really strong, and Sunderland are one of the teams who were losing a lot of momentum. And so even those games where before you were probably looking at a potential respite are now looking like really tricky games. Swansea last weekend was probably another example of that. I'm not hugely concerned about Sunderland, and that I think they will get enough points between now and the end of the season. I think that although Jack Clarke's obviously going to be out for a while, I think they will get some key players back. After the international break, Patrick Roberts is going to be a really important one. Adji Elise is going to be another important one. So I think they're going to be okay. But I have to say that I think it might get worse before it gets better. And personally, although we've just been speaking to Mike Dodds, who's kind of said it's fine margins and he still believes someone can impact the top 6 race, I think it's very difficult to see that as it stands. And so while I do think Sunderland are going to be fine, I don't have any concerns on that front, I do fear that it might get a bit worse before it gets a bit better. And we shouldn't either, I'm not trying to sort of duck the issue either, in that is a really sort of damning indictment of the way the season's gone, because this is a team that was, even when it wasn't winning, it was giving us some frustration. It was playing really good football, it tended to create quite a lot of chances, and the season's really, really, really sort of fallen away now. And ultimately, while injuries are a big factor in that, I do believe that Clarke, was a big miss today. I do think it's because the recruitment probably since the summer window hasn't been good enough, and the players who might be good in time at the moment aren't ready to impact the games at the level Sunderland need them to. And I go back to it, I know everyone has their opinions on Tony Mowbray, and a lot of people felt his tenure was sort of running its course, but that was, as now it's a series of really bad decisions, and I think a lot of what's happened to Sunderland this season is self-inflicted, and that makes it all the more frustrating. One topic that a lot of you have asked about, a few sort of different angles to the question, but hopefully I'll try and cover it off as best I can, is about Job, and I suppose more specifically people desperate to see Chris Rigg get an opportunity. I completely echo that. I think that Chris Rigg had a huge impact when he came on today. He played again in that sort of right wing role. He brings so much energy, he gets up and down the pitch, he clatters into challenges, and he's got a lovely left foot. He played some gorgeous little passes out onto this flank, which looked like it could actually yield something for Sunderland, because Barr was looking a bit of a threat. For me, Chris Rigg has to get a start soon. Ultimately he's here, and he's not one of those big Premier League clubs, because Sunderland said that there would be a pathway for him and a chance for him to start games. Where we are in the season at the moment, and with the general level of performance across the team, I don't think you can deny Rigg a start soon. What I would say as a caveat to that is, in fairness to Mike Dodds, is that when I spoke to him, I asked about this at the pre-match press conference on Thursday. He made very clear that Rigg was close to starting. He's just said that to me again in the post-match press conference, because I asked the question again. He said he's really pleased with him, training really well, and he's really close to the team. There are another 2 games coming up in the next week. So I feel like we should revisit that one after the Southampton game, because I feel and hope that Rigg might have had his first start at that point. The Job aspect of it, I have to say that I can only kind of give you my honest opinion, and for me today I don't think there was a huge issue in midfield. I thought Sunderland battled pretty well. I thought at times they moved the ball into some really encouraging areas out wide. If you actually think about the game, I think there were a lot of times, whether it was Barr towards the end, whether it was Hume on the right wing, Eildon even yelled it to an extent. Sunderland actually got into some pretty promising wide areas, because I thought the midfield won a lot of challenges and played a lot of good forward passes. I thought Joe put in a really big shift. I thought he pressed really well. I thought he offered a lot of support to Hamir and then Rooston in that front in terms of getting up the pitch. Really put in a big shift. I do, I've said loads of times of late, I think there's a question, is he playing too much football? I think that's probably fair. And I think at some point this season, he's going to have to be rotated, and I think that moment's probably coming. But I would say as well, I thought Neil Eckler and Job, I don't think that was the huge issue for Sunderland today. I thought Neil created a lot in the second half, and I thought that was one of Job's better performances for a little while. But I do agree with the point that I do think he's maybe been overplayed a little bit of late, and I definitely think it's time for Rigg to get a start. I don't think he can do much more coming off the bench, and I think we all want to see him. So let's have a look at some of the other questions. This one's from the boy Jones. So he says, was the squad overachieving under Mowbray, or does the current tactical plan not suit it? I think it's a little bit of both. I think we're seeing that the team is definitely overachieving under Mowbray. I think what we have seen is that the issues in the final third aren't easily solved. Louis Hamir, I think there was aspects of his performance that I quite liked. I think you can see that he's getting fitter and that he's pressing better. Sometimes the service into the box isn't very good. Sometimes you feel like Sunderland could cross a bit earlier, but there were actually some really good balls played into the box today. I do just feel that if you compare where Sunderland strikers are at to, say, Josh Sargent today, who even when he wasn't at his best, I thought was a real threat throughout the game, I just don't think they're quite at the level yet, and that's not necessarily a reflection on them, it's just their experience and where they are in their careers. And so I think that Sunderland were overachieving under Mowbray, and I think that ultimately, regardless of whether you think he should have stayed or whether he should have gone, I think it's very obvious that he was getting more out of this group of players than what we've seen since he's gone. And I think that's something that Sunderland, for me, I think that the decision makers of the club have to reflect on, because they're an evidence-based operation. That's what we're told. Well, the evidence was that Sunderland were a really good top six contender under Tony Mowbray in the first half of this season. Yes, they had some issues, but to me that looked like personnel rather than tactical, and I think what's happened since then has borne that out. So I still think there are a lot of real questions about the path that Sunderland took and why they made those decisions that they did. I agree with some supporters who say that the service isn't really there for the strikers, and that we could feed the strikers better early and play earlier. I do think that goes a little bit of both ways. I think at times you can see that the players maybe don't quite trust the strikers to make the ball stick, and I think that's sometimes why they turn down the option to play forward a little bit quicker. And I can kind of understand that sometimes, because if you're under pressure in a game against a side like Norwich, you're really good at home, I think you fear just sort of coughing possession back up and giving them that momentum and getting sort of caught back in your own half by giving the ball away. So while I agree that sometimes I don't think Sunderland feed their strikers, and there's clearly not enough balls going into the box for Hamir to feed on, because we saw in pre-season that's what he's good at, I do think it goes a little both ways. And I ultimately, personally, I think at the moment all the issues come down to recruitment. I don't think the players that have come in over the last two transfer windows are ready yet to play in a side that gets the level of results consistently that you need to be a playoff contender. Now, that's not me saying you have to tear up the model, because I think a lot of the signings since the new regime came in have been very, very good, and they've delivered a lot of progress. But I think at the moment the balance hasn't quite been right. It's something we've spoken about. There aren't enough players in the team at the moment who you can consistently depend on to play at a certain level, and I think we're seeing that reflected in the performances again. Couldn't knock personally the endeavour of the players today. Mundell was a great example. I thought he worked really, really hard, gave the elder a lot of support. But ultimately, understandably, he's not quite at Jack Clark's level yet. So let's have a look at what else we've got here. A few questions asking where the next win's coming from and how many games do I think Sunderland can realistically win before the end of the season. I do think that the results will level out a little bit, because I don't think that there's been a huge amount between the two teams of late. Last week, the Swans game, ultimately Mike Dodds tried something that didn't work, for the first half. The second half, even though Sunderland went very creative, I thought was a lot more level. I stand by. I don't think there was a huge amount between the two teams today. I think it's about fine margins, and I would go back to the game between the two last year with regards to that. So I do think at some point, Sunderland will pick up a few wins. Maybe it'll be in a game we don't expect them to against a strong opponent, because I think the endeavour is there and the hard work is there. What I would also say is they're not, for me, going to win anywhere near enough games between now and the end of the season to really threaten the top six. And I think they're probably going to finish, so I think maybe in the top half, just because I just don't think the quality is there in the final third at the moment, especially without Clark and Roberts. And again, a lot of questions about the recruitment and the model. I think there's two aspects to it. I think they really destabilised the team by getting rid of a manager who I feel was getting probably just about the most you could out of this young and experienced group, and with some of the issues in the squad. And also that I think that the failure to address the obvious shortcomings in the January window continues to bite, especially up front. I understand there's a desire, to not push the club financially, to make good decisions, to not panic. But I think the lack of nous and experience in the final third, I think is really telling. And someone like what Kiefer Moore's doing at Ipswich, I think it shows that even if the market has become hugely inflated, Sunderland need to reassess a little bit in the summer and find a better balance. I totally understand the point the fans make, that at the moment the service isn't good enough to the strikers, but I do think if you have someone who's experienced at this level and has a stature about them and has that experience, I think they'll bring themselves into the game. And I think you'll see the players around them look for them more and look for them earlier, because they'll have that trust in them. Again, not a knock on Hamir at all. I thought his work rate was really good today. I think you can see signs he's getting fitter. I think there's a promise there. But I think he's probably, he's one of the few strikers who isn't quite at the level that you need to be at the moment. And again, that comes back to recruitment. So, yeah, thanks very much for all your questions. I'll be doing a sort of a written version of this when a few that I haven't got to, I'll answer as well. I think I'll probably go into a bit more detail about the model and some of your other questions around that. So look out for that on the website on Monday night. We'll be back with a podcast on Monday sometime, I assume, and I'll be back with another edition of On the Whistle on Tuesday after the Leicester game. So thanks very much for sending your questions in. I'm sorry again that it can't be a more upbeat one. And yeah, let's hope that Sunderland can sort of produce something for us on Tuesday. But it's really worrying, and a lot of you just sending your messages in really saying how sort of apathetic you are, and I think I totally get that emotion. It is so frustrating to watch a season that, from a very promising position, has really, really unravelled. And ultimately, I think so much of it is self-inflicted, because I think Sunderland have made some bad footballing decisions from sort of the middle of December onwards. And that makes it all the more frustrating. So yeah, sorry I couldn't be a cheerer on the whistle, and see you again on Tuesday. Thanks again for sending your questions in and keep them coming.